Thanks very much, Tom. Thanks all for staying on for this session. It's been a sort of a challenging week to 10 days for those considering investment in the waste sector, particularly energy from waste facilities. We've seen, as Keith mentioned earlier, the ROC rebanding. We also had slight downgrading of the feed-in tariff for large biomass plants, which I believe, from discussions with Ofgem, might involve waste facilities. But I think there's still a lot of reason for optimism and opportunities for investment in the sector. And one of the most critical things, I think possibly more important, those minor shifts in ROCs and the renewable heat incentive are gaining access to feedstock. We all know that to get finance for a facility, you have to have waste going in. So what I'm going to talk about is fairly straightforward: investing in waste facilities which have access to feedstock. I'm not going to talk about contracting in too much detail, although I accept that certainly, although the waste can be available, certainly the contracts do also need to be in place to get the lending secured. So I'll talk briefly at the start just about some context and objectives. I know some of you are more familiar with the waste sector than others, so I'll give a quick key definitions and glossary. Talk about the national picture, what the level of availability of waste is currently. Moving then on to regional waste availability and focusing in on specific geographical areas where more waste is certainly available than in others, and thus giving more opportunity for investment. Summary of key messages, and I'm certainly going to give a plug at the end how to get access to all this information that I'm going to speak to you about today. So, apologies, my slides have gone slightly awry. I think it's a different version of PowerPoint, but hopefully you can see everything. I think we talked about earlier already today, the landfill tax escalator is driving major change within the sector. Currently at £56 a tonne, rising £8 a year, up to £80 a tonne in 2014. That represents a far sort of increasing and higher level against which treatment technologies need to compete. So what the presentation and our related report explores is whether from a feedstock availability perspective there are still opportunities and where those opportunities are. And just briefly on, if you're just thinking, who am I, why am I here? Eunomia, we're a specialist waste consultancy, had our 10-year anniversary this year. We have possibly, arguably, the largest sort of strategic, economic focused waste team in the UK, and we spend a lot of our time working with the investment community, with project developers, trying to get facilities over the line. So just to talk, what I'm actually focusing on today is residual waste management. We have in the past produced studies specifically on food waste and anaerobic digestion, for example. A few of these knocking around free of charge. If anyone wants to get hold of those today or from our website. But we're actually looking at residual, what a lot of people think of as mixed waste, the material left over after recycling, composting and direct land spreading. And the focus of the research is on capacity gaps, i.e. the margin between the amount of residual waste arising, that which are available, and the current and future levels of treatment capacity, and therefore the amount of space within the market for new plants and investment in new capacity. Several similar types of residual waste can be co-treated. We've got what's called local authority collected waste. We're not allowed really to use municipal solid waste, or MSW the term anymore. Things are changing now. I won't go into that, however very interesting it is. We've got commercial and industrial waste, which are similar in form, many of them, to local authority collected waste. They can be treated in the same plant. They might be processed by a range of treatment technologies, listed a few of those there. Incineration, gasification, pyrolysis, often get banded under a term engine from waste or EFW. Mechanical biological treatment, I think Keith showed a few slides earlier, takes many forms. Generally a separation technology, pre-treatment technology to create a fuel, as is autoclaving. And I think dropped off at the bottom of my slide, as I recall, we're also looking at what we call waste incineration directive compliant biomass plant. The plant which is set up to treat wood waste or wood streams, but they have the abatement equipment installed deliberately. So because there are feedstock issues associated with biomass plant, which I'm sure some of you know about, they are able to take solid recovered fuels, so from these waste streams, if needed. So they're representing a sort of competitive influence on the market. So to move straight in, look at the national picture. Existing water residual treatment capacity. There's either operating or under construction, 28 dedicated incineration plants, 4 gasifiers, 26 pre-treatment plants. We've got 12 of these WIT-compliant biomass plants that I talked about. We've also got cement kilns which can process solid recovered fuels as well, up to about sort of 5% of their energy input value. The current capacity gap across Great Britain, I said Great Britain rather than UK because we're not included in Northern Ireland. There actually is no form of residual treatment currently in Northern Ireland, and perhaps we should be presenting that because it therefore represents an opportunity. The current capacity gap, we've got 35 million tonnes just over of residual waste arising, 13 million tonnes of residual treatment. Although that's dropped off, I think my arithmetic is good enough to remember that we've therefore got a capacity gap of about just over 22 million tonnes of waste which currently isn't being treated and does require treatment and can be competitive with landfill in most parts of the country due to the landfill tax. To look at the rising treatment capacity just in graphical form, we've got risings, as you can see, on the left, local authority collected waste in the black and commercial industrial in grey. The total treatment capacity on the next bar along, showing the orange, which is the operational under construction part, and hence between there and there you've got that 22 million tonnes gap. Then you have the amount which has planning consent received in the yellow, and then the capacity which has planning consent submitted but not received in green. So all that capacity in the yellow and green, there is potential for that to come online, albeit we all know, or those involved in considering investments in waste plants, that it is difficult to get projects over the line from a feedstock availability perspective or feedstock contracting perspective. You need that guaranteed or certain guaranteed levels of input. Perhaps we're talking 70% contracted inputs for a lender to be interested in that market, with 30% perhaps of merchant capacity. The different shares of the different technologies are also listed there. Where are these facilities located? We've just done a national map, and I'll show you some regional maps in more detail in a second. We've just put those which are operational and under construction on this map. As you can see, there's a reasonable spread of facilities, mainly around the areas of population. So we tend to see facilities in either sort of semi-urban or urban areas, or on industrial parks. What's perhaps more interesting than looking at current capacity, and certainly from an investment perspective, is looking at the future and what the capacity gap might be. How might a plant be able to compete for particularly C&I waste going forward and actually get enough feedstock into the plant to meet cover ratios, etc. on investment. Headline assumptions, we've modelled the future capacity. We've talked about recycling rates earlier today. We're currently broadly at about 50% across the UK if we look across the waste streams I mentioned. We have assumed that rising to about 67% in 2020. We can argue the toss over whether that's correct or not, but that's the assumption we've made. For example, in Scotland and Wales, they're aiming for 70% plus, whereas England is probably slightly less ambitious, looking at 60%. I think we'll probably go further than that, and we've modelled 67. We've also made assumptions over waste growth. We've made different assumptions for different waste types. But in the round, putting those together, we've modelled that waste rising by about 3 million tonnes between 2010 and 2020. Another key assumption in our modelling is the assumed development success rate of facilities, which are currently either consented or in planning. Those are the yellow and the green blocks in the bars that I showed you just previously. We've assumed that those that have currently received consent 70% of those will get to financial close. Obviously, 30% of those which are currently still in the planning process, don't have consent, will reach financial close. There are, we've made assumptions across those different types of facilities. Obviously, when we're looking at very bespoke analysis for site-specific client work, we will look more specifically at every single plant. For example, if Veolia, let's say, has consent for a plant, we'd probably give it about a 95% chance of success, because we know when large waste management companies